Hi, this is Hector Garcia, and this is part two of multiple company consolidations in QuickBooks. On first part one, I show you how to make consolidations using QuickBooks Enterprise with a specific function that QuickBooks Enterprise has that allows you to consolidate multiple QuickBooks files. On this part two, we're going to talk about combining reports in Excel. So you actually don't have to have QuickBooks Enterprise. You just need to have any version of QuickBooks Desktop like QuickBooks Pro, Premier, Accountant, or Enterprise. In this example, we're going to do QuickBooks Enterprise because that's the version that I use for most of my clients anyway. But again, this will work on any version of QuickBooks Desktop. So we're going to talk about export reports into Excel and combine them manually. Now, you're going to see that there's a lot of nuance around it. You got to pay attention to a lot of the little details. And you're going to start seeing how I'm going to make modifications to the files to make this work. All right. So let's go ahead and open up QuickBooks. And I already have both of the files open. So for example, on the left side, I have a company called Wholesale Company. So let's say this is one of the businesses that I own, Wholesale Company. And then on the right side, I own another company called Advertising Services. And what I want to do is I want to combine these or consolidate them into one single report. So, and again, you don't have to have them both open at the same time. I'm doing that just to make it easier to illustrate the point here. So I'm going to start with the first file, and then I'm going to take this report and I'm going to export it into Excel. So the first thing I want to do is obviously go to Reports, Company Financial, Profit and Loss, Standard, because that's what I'm combining. So I'm going to pull the profit and loss, and most of the times I want to hit collapse because when I consolidate, I typically don't look at subaccounts, and we'll discuss that as we do the consolidation. But we're going to start with a consolidated or a collapsed financial statement. So let me export this into Excel. So I'm just going to click on Excel, new Excel worksheet, and then I'm going to follow the prompts to open the report in Excel. And there it is. There's my first report in Excel. If I actually try to print this, I just want to show you real quick. If I try to print it, I do have my header in the top that shows Wholesale Company. And that's something that I'm going to have to modify. I'm going to have to change the header for it to say something like combined report or something like that. But up here where it says total, here I'm going to type wholesale. So I'm going to replace the word total to wholesale because now I have to count on those titles for me to know what's going on. So let me go into the other file, okay, and do the same thing. Go to Excel, create new worksheet, and just follow the prompt and export that into Excel as well. And now that I got the two spreadsheets, let me give a title to this one. So this is the Advertising Services business. Okay, so I got one spreadsheet on the right side with one of my financial statements and one on the left side with my other financial statements. And the idea is that I bring all this information here to consolidate. So let me first grab the title from the other one and then bring it into here. And then basically on this spreadsheet on the right side is where we're going to be pasting all of our information. Let's start with revenue. That's the easy one. Notice that none of our income accounts are called revenue. So I'm going to have to basically create a new one in here somewhere. I'll do it at the top. And then I'm going to go ahead and copy that and paste it here. There we go. Now I have to be very careful that this 411 go in the wholesale column, because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to combine them, but also show the performance of both of them. Now, what I don't want to do is bring in those lines, those subtotals. That will make it very confusing. So when I do my copy and paste, I want to make sure that when I paste, I do paste values. That way I don't paste any other formatting. And then I'll cut that and paste that over here. Okay, good. So I'm good to go with revenue. And you will notice that my total income already has a formula in there, and we may have to modify that formula. We'll take care of that later on. Now let's take a look at our cost of goods sold. So see, none of these accounts match exactly the accounts we have here. So technically we're going to have to insert 5 lines in there. So I'm going to have to come in here and just insert 5 lines right click, insert, open up that space, and then I'll bring in the accounts, copy them, paste them, grab the numbers, copy them, and then paste them on the right side. Perfect. Okay. And again, these are not matching next to each other because they don't have the same account names. I mean, it would have been really useful to plan this before and make sure both financial statements have the same account names. We'll discuss that. That's going to be a little bit later on when I discuss the prep work that should go behind the QuickBooks files before we actually try to do something like this. Okay, so let's take a look at our expense account. So we have, let's assume for a minute that all these will be new. So let's see how many are here in total. Okay, so that's 22. So we can insert 22 lines in here. Let's see, hit insert. Okay, and then I'm going to come in with that, all my account list, hit copy, bring that over. Okay, I didn't insert enough columns, I mean rows. Let me insert some more. Okay, hopefully that's enough. Let's try that. Just make sure I'm still overlapping. So let me insert some more. Again, this is a very manual process. This is why on the first video I talk about how QuickBooks Enterprise does this really, really nicely. Okay, let's see. So let's paste. Okay, there we go. So now there's no overlap. Perfect. And then I'll delete that extra one and then take all my numbers and paste them here on the wholesale side. Okay, perfect. Okay, now for the time being, let's just do a quick sanity check here. Let's do a formula that sums up all of our expenses just to make sure we arrive at the same number here. And let's do another formula here that calculates all my cost of goods sold. Okay, so my gross profit would be, in this case, my total income minus my cost of goods sold. And I have to also make sure that I have a formula here that also sums up all of my income. Perfect. Okay, so if I take my total cost of goods sold, which is going to come from my total income, I should have my gross profit of 202. Let's just double check on the left side. Okay, we're good to go. So now, so far so good. I got my gross profit going pretty well. Now let's take a look at our total expenses, which in this case is 935. Let's see. And there it is, 93 or 93,590. Okay, that matches. So I can also do my net income calculation, which would be my gross profit minus my total expense. Perfect. 108, 843, and then I got my other expense. You could just copy and paste that here, and that should be fairly simple. I could just copy these formulas over. That should be identical, and I can copy this formula over, and that should also be identical. All right, perfect. So that works just fine. What I also want to do is take this entire column and hit copy, and then come into G, and then I'm going to paste special and only bring in the formatting. So I'm going to bring in the formats only and then hit OK. That way these are all formatted with the same fonts, same line, everything all the same. So I know my numbers are good, but now if I try to print this, this is going to be a very messy report because I want this to be as consolidated as possible. I know I couldn't win on the income side, I couldn't win on the cost of goods side, but maybe on the expenses we'll be able to find some things and match. So let's be in the hunt for those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select only the expenses side, so only the expenses side in here, and then I'm going to sort them. So I'm going to go to sort, and then I'll sort them by the same column where my expenses are. So I would select column E and then hit OK. And there you go. So we're going to see a couple of these that are the same, and other ones that are the same. Those are going to be pretty easy. So what I'll do is in this case, I'll copy and bring this up. Copy this and bring this up. I can delete the extras. Copy this, bring this up. delete the extra. I can also do cut, paste, cut, paste, cut, paste, and some of these numbers are similar probably because, you know, the way I did my accounting internally had similar numbers there. So cut, paste, paste. Okay, let me see. So these two, okay, I can also consolidate these two. Perfect. Okay, so some of these accounts have the same names, and the ones that do, they will go through that process. Perfect. Yeah, so that's good. Okay, and when you start seeing some that don't, those are the ones that we're going to start deleting. And I'm just cutting and pasting to put them up in the same line. Okay, perfect. Okay, and then all these that have basically blanks, I can delete them. So that should be a fairly easy process. I can just resort these. And I can resort these maybe by column F, doesn't really matter. And then all the ones that are blank, I can just delete. Okay, make sure my formula here works again. So sum all of my expenses. And we can now resort these maybe in alphabetical order. Let's see that. So sort by column E. Okay, and that should give me a consolidated. So then at this point, all I would have to do is then just add these up together. So I would go to equals that plus that, so the two columns, and then come in with cost of goods sold. Okay, and notice I'm just copying cost of goods sold. I could go across, but it would be pointless the way it is configured here. Then we'll add these two together. And then we just copy these down. Okay, and then what I can do is I can delete the blanks. And then I can copy, and then I can paste, again, just the formats. This would be total. And there you go. There's my consolidated profit and loss report for the total. So that was pretty simple. And the premise is this was a very manual process because the chart of accounts wasn't the same. How would have been possible for me to pull this off without so much manual work? So I wanted to show you this process first before we do it the other way. The way I would do this, it's when I go into the chart of accounts of my QuickBooks files, is I would create more parent accounts and put most of these as subaccounts. So let me tell you what I explain by that. So for example, here in all the income accounts, I would go into my chart of accounts and then just create one account called revenue, right, to match the one on my left side. So I'll do one account called revenue. And then I would make all of these a sub-account of revenue. So I'm just clicking and dragging to the right. You can also right-click edit and click on make sub-account of revenue. That's another way you can do it. I obviously want to do it the fast way. So I'm just dragging them to the right, and that should put them all as a sub-account of revenue. So see, so when I look at my financial statement, I can actually collapse them or expand them, and that would actually allow me to literally just copy and paste them together. On the cost of goods sold side, I could do the exact same thing. So in this case, I may not need to, because cost of goods sold is an account that typically we collapse as well. So I can actually just collapse cost of goods sold as a whole, and then when I export it, I'll export it like this, which would actually be perfect. But then the tricky part is under the expense account. So what I'm first going to do, because if you look at the first exercise, we have the same accounts, but if you look at the way they're displayed here, they may not be displayed on alphabetical order. So I'm going to go to a sort by and do a default, and that's going to go alphabetical order. And then I'll go with the other company here, and the same thing, I'll do sort by default, and that should be in alphabetical order. And to further double check that these are alphabetical order, I'm going to go into the list menu, go to chart of accounts, and then click up here where it says accounts, or down there, and click on resort list and hit OK. And that would resort them in alphabetical order just in case I manually change the order. So resort list, okay, that will resort them again. So now when I'm looking at the financial statements again with the right accounts collapse, I technically should have the same accounts more or less they're being used. Now, in some cases, for example, you see this one is called Meals Local on this side, and then it looks Meals and Entertainment on that side. I should definitely change the name of that. So I should start planning and making sure that all my accounts have the same name more or less. So we'll call this Meals and Entertainment. Okay, and then okay, perfect. So and then let's compare. Let's see what else was different. And then we got one was called Wages on one side, and the other one's called Wages Non-Project Related. So I'm probably going to also change the name of that, Wages Non-Project Related, and just put wages in there. Again, you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit of custom naming to be able to get your accounts to work correctly. So there you go. So now I fixed them both, but there's one last trick here. We really don't know what accounts are being used on each side. It is possible that on one side an account is being used and on the other side an account is not. So I'm going to throw an example out there. Then let me see if I can delete any one transaction. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete these transactions here. That way nothing is being used on this account called business license and permits. So what's going to happen is that when I look at my profit and loss, business license and fees shouldn't show up at all. So when I actually go and consolidate these, that one is going to be missing. So let's do the example with that, so then we get to appreciate the last step that we're going to take. So let me go ahead and close my other report here, the one I was working on, and do the Excel export again. And I'm sorry I had to do this twice like this and making the video extra long. However, you really don't get to enjoy the second part until you kind of go through the long process of doing these. So after we cleaned up a chart of accounts, then we're going to export the reports again. And we'll do it on the other QuickBooks file. Okay. And we should soon have both Excel files open there. Okay, there's one and there's the other. So let's put them next to each other. Okay, there we go. So this is my wholesale. And this is my services. Accommodate these, okay? So there's my wholesale and then there's my services, okay? So I got my two revenue lines, they match 100%. So that's not gonna be a lot of work. My cost of goods sold, yep, I made a mistake. I didn't match them up together, but again, I can just do a hide in here like this, and I can also do a hide in here like this, because in this case, let's say, for example, I'm just gonna manually hide them, okay? So then I'll have them exact. And then when I actually try to copy and paste this information, let me show you. And I'm gonna go down here. Notice that I'm long here. And the reason why I'm long is because I have more accounts on this side being used than the ones on the left side. And the reason for that is because I deleted those two transactions that were hitting business license and permits on the left side, or I forgot which transaction it was, but I deleted a transaction that was hitting a category on the left side that is not being hit on the right side, and therefore these are not going to match 100%. So I'm going to close these to show you what is the ultimate way of getting these done. So again, once you you at least clean up the chart of accounts as much as possible. What you're going to do is you're going to export the chart of accounts from one of the files and import it into the other one, and then export it from the other one and import it on the one that you exported from originally. That way we get the exact same chart of accounts on both sides. So I'm going to go to File, Utilities, and Export List to IIF. And let me just make sure I only have one QuickBooks file open at a time. And just some side commentary. It is absolutely much easier to just work with QuickBooks Enterprise that can do the consolidation. See the first part of this video series. I've depending on how much time you have to spare to create these reports, is it worth it saving a couple $1,000 that QuickBooks Enterprise costs? I don't know. I'm not sure. Okay, so this is the advertising services company, and I'll save the chart of accounts there. And I'll switch over to my other company, which was my wholesale. And then I'm going to import the chart of accounts in this one. Okay, so I'm going to go into the File menu, Utilities, Import, IIF file. Select the IIF file I just exported from the other file. This is going to bring in the chart of accounts. Okay, so now whatever accounts I had on that side will now be merged with the accounts on this side. And you have to do that, trust me. And then I'll do the same thing here. I'm going to go to File, Utilities, Export, List to IIF, chart of accounts. And this is from the wholesale company. And then I'll switch over to my other one. And this becomes way more complex when you're consolidating 3 or 4 companies. You can start picturing this, right? But hopefully, you don't have that many to consolidate. Again, if you're working with 3 companies or more, I would definitely just get QuickBooks Enterprise and not worry about this whole thing. Okay, so let me import the chart of accounts from the other one into this one. And now I officially have both chart of accounts completely identical, including balance sheet accounts, which should also be kind of tricky and kind of messy. So you may want to work with subaccounts and groupings. That way all the accounts show up more cleanly. Anyway, so let's pull up my profit and loss for this year. Okay, there's my profit and loss. See, nothing has changed. I imported a chart of accounts, but nothing really has changed. It will change when I do something else. And let me open the second company. Okay, and this would be for my advertising services business. Perfect. And I'll put these two next to each other. So my wholesale on the left and my advertising services on the right. That way we can look at both reports in there. Okay, and so far we haven't done anything fancy yet. We're about to get there. So after we imported the chart of accounts on both sides, the profit and loss reports don't look different. Why? Because there may be extra accounts in there, but there isn't necessarily transactions in those accounts. But there's one very specific trick that I'm about to do. I'm going to go to Customize Report, click on Advanced, and then click on All. Extremely important. So we're going to go to Advanced and then All and hit OK. And that's going to include all my accounts that have zeros in it. I don't care about that for now. I'm going to go in my other reports, go to Advanced, and then click on All and do the exact same thing. So now I'm going to expand both of my chart of accounts on both sides, including all the ones that are not being used. But what's really nice about these is because I am doing this show all. When I export this into Excel, I don't have to clean anything up manually. So you're going to see exactly how that works as I put that in there. So let me export the first one. Okay, and then I'll go on the other QuickBooks file, do the same thing. Perfect. Okay, so now both of my Excel files open. So I'm gonna put them here next to each other. Okay, there we go. And then, so if you remember, the idea behind the whole long process of exporting the chart of accounts from one and then importing it to the other one and vice versa, what was so then when we do the copy and paste in Excel, that I don't have to manually look into each account and match them up and that sort of thing. I can literally, let me type here, advertising services, which is the name of one of the companies. I can literally come in here and take just the column. I don't even have to look at the accounts. I just know they're gonna be right and paste them in here. And notice that when I scroll up and down, all my lines line up perfectly. Again, the reason for that is because we have the exact same chart of accounts in both sides, okay? And because we have the same chart of accounts in both sides, I don't have to worry about matching them up and that sort of thing. So then I can come in here and do the total or the consolidated, and then I can simply just hit equals that plus that, press enter, and then drag all the way down. I do have to get rid of these random zeros that just don't belong here. Okay, all the little gaps. Okay, perfect. And then I'm gonna copy one of these columns and then paste special formats only. Look at that. Beautiful consolidation. Although it seemed like a really long process because I was getting the chart of accounts working, you really only have to do that once. Afterwards, you don't have to worry about that ever again. Now the last piece here, if I select all these columns and I go to data filter, I can actually come into my total column and then just uncheck the zeros and hit OK. And that's going to get rid of all the accounts that I'm not using. And then at the end, even if I have extra accounts in there that are not being used, they're going to be filtered out super quickly and super easy. Okay, so that was combining two financial statements from QuickBooks using Excel and all the little nuances around getting it put together. This is part 2 of the 4-part video series. On the 3rd video that I will post within a month or so, we'll talk about using a single QuickBooks file and using classes to manage multiple entities and all the pros and cons of doing that. And then on the 4th one, which will release probably around summer of 2017, we'll talk about using third-party apps. So there's a whole bunch of third-party apps out there. So we're going to pick a few and then just kind of talk about those. All right. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something new.